So 3 things we want to cover today in our agenda. What are diverse hiring practices? But an even more important part, why is this important? Why does it matter? Because if you do the work to diversify a team but don't fully have a good foundation on the why, often there's a lot of I would say, backlashes. What are you doing? Are you filling quotas? What are you doing? So getting to the why is going to be important. And then finally, how do we cultivate a diverse team? So strategies to really bring a rich, diverse team to the workplace. Okay, so let's start off with the what. My just basic definition of what diverse hiring practices looks like. So, diverse hiring practices, really the focus is intentionality. Being intentional and strategic in our practices and purposely looking to diversify and enrich our team or pool of applicants. So diverse hiring, again, I want to underscore this importance of intentionality. You don't accidentally get married, right? You don't just wake up and say, oh, I'm married. How did that happen? You don't accidentally stay married, right? Those who have been married for many years are like, oh, this took work. All right. So again, for our workplace teams to be diverse, it doesn't happen by accident. We have to be intentional, we have to be strategic, and we have to really know the why behind this intentionality. Okay. So moving along, the ABCs, as the academic network talks about the ABCs of diverse hiring, they talk about the importance of locating candidates first. We have to be able to find people who bring a richness, not only the concrete skills that we need for a particular job, but they also meet more of the cultural aspects that we want to enrich our teams with. So locating personnel is important. Then once we locate, we want to recruit. What are our recruiting strategies to bring, candidates that we find highly beneficial to our teams onto campus? And then finally, how do we keep people, some of the best and the brightest, how do we keep top team members on our campus? It's one thing to bring people to campus for any position. It's another thing to retain them. And so retaining talent is going to be a key aspect of this as well. So what are some critical areas that you have to address when you're looking at doing diverse hiring or bringing in a more robust pool of people and applicants from a variety of different backgrounds, genders, perspectives, etc.? Well, definitely a job statement. It's important for a business or church, or in this case, higher ed, APU being an institution of higher ed, to have a clear statement on diversity. People don't want to just see diversity in the job announcement and then not find it any other place institutionally. It has to be already a core value of who you are. Second, in your job description, do you spell out explicitly that you want key players who come from a variety of backgrounds? So this quality of this individuality, but uniqueness, and also perspectives being an important part of that. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Unconscious bias, you have to address that. Search teams. Search teams can inadvertently sabotage a diverse hiring practice or hiring process before it's even fully processed. And I'll give you an example. There's been a number of studies that have focused on names, and they found that inadvertently there's an unconscious bias towards unique names or difficult to pronounce names that we're not familiar with. So, for example, I have a cousin. I'm just going to pick on my family for a second. I have a cousin named Shaniqua. Okay. Well, Shaniqua may be a common name in the African American community, but for others, maybe she's hiring for a position in a top business position. It's not uncommon to find search committees who might even make fun of a name, like, what is this? Or to dismiss the applicant altogether. I can't even pronounce the name, let's move on to the next candidate. So being conscious of that before you get started, that's important. Other things like recruitment target, techniques, what techniques are we going to use, which places, venues are we going to, again, diversify our search, not just looking at the generic or general places to search for candidates, marketing, publications, all of these factors, and then funding. How often have we heard from departments or offices, oh, we would love to hire more people. In fact, we need more employees in this office, but we don't have the funding. So that becomes a criteria, again, not to be able to diversify the team. And then campus enrichment surveys, wanting to make sure that you capitalize on what are the needs of the community. What are we hearing from our constituents, including students, as well as faculty, staff members, and administration. And this year alone, we've heard some feedback from the climate study that our students are saying we want to see faculty and staff mirror more of who we are in terms of our diversification. So that is a need that we already know is present here at APU. Right on? So let's get to the why. Why does this matter? Why is this important? If you have questions or get pushback from others who say, you know, is this a affirmative action thing, or are you just trying to fill quotas? Someone recently asked me following a campus climate presentation, straight out, well, yeah, how many people of color do you want us to have? Just how many? That was a flat out question, and I gave a flat out answer. So that aside, let me dig into the real reasons of why. We have research on this. Scientists have talked about this idea of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is this idea when you're around heterogeneous populations, when you're around people who are different than you, who think differently, look differently, have different life experiences, we challenge each other to see things from a different angle and perspective. We can be myopic as long as we tend to be around people who vote like us, who look like us, who have the same social class as us. But the moment we're in a room with people who have different ways of seeing the world, who live and breathe and experience things from different angles, it challenges us. And they talk about the brain synapses and the connections that fire up in our brain when we're around people who challenge us to see things from a different way. In fact, they say it makes us smarter. That the research talks about students who have the opportunity to learn in diverse communities actually are greater thinkers, more complex thinkers. Because you can't give shallow, superficial responses to things. You have to dig deeper. And so it makes us collectively better to be around each other. Imagine that God already knew that. And he said, you know, I'm going to make people, and they're going to look different, and this is going to be a good thing. He could have made us all look the same, act the same, etc. But he wanted some variety, and that is a good thing. It makes us stronger. So research, in fact, AACNU, when they polled employers around the world, they asked them, what are the top things you want in a recent college graduate in terms of an employee? And they said, we want people who can be around others who are different than them. We want people who can thrive in a pluralistic society. Pluralistic environment, meaning that the people may be Muslim, they may be African, they may be a woman, they may be gay, they may be this, that, whatever. But you're able to hold your own and appreciate who you are, but also respect and appreciate who they are. That's what makes you a winning and more competitive employee, being able to be around diverse people. So Yale, in some of their work and research, and I kind of condensed down this statement, but I loved it, and I thought we've got to readapt some of our statements on this. They say a diverse workforce and inclusive environment increases productivity. Imagine that. Increases. You want to increase your productivity? Get some diversity there. Creates new ideas. People they're thinking out of the box. It's not a cookie cutter way of thinking. Different angles again. It allows us to perform on a higher level and enhances ability to continue to excel an increasingly complex and competitive, diverse world. If we're going to keep our competitive edge, we need people who see things that we don't see. We need people who can read the air. There's a great book I'm reading now, and they talk about having that cultural intelligence where you can read the air. Because you can't always speak the language, but you need that emotional and cultural intelligence to be able to pick up on what's actually happening, what's the tension or feeling or mood in the room, so that you don't grossly offend people. So those kinds of things. If that was not enough, if research is not enough, Christian impetus, I love that. This is not just a good thing to do. This is the imperative. This is the heart of God. It's not just, oh, I'm doing a nice thing. This is value rooted in my belief system, that we are all valuable in the sight of God, and God loves us all. For God to love the world, not just Americans, God to love the world. And so this idea of a Christian mandate, APU has a diversity statement. It is a part of our mission. And so taking back the roots of what our mission says and infusing that into the job description. There's lots of language, even in our identity statement, that you can take directly from our What We Believe booklet, put it right into your job description. So you don't even have to think of a lot of words, but right there. Our ongoing commitment to make things better and better. So I have to admit, it's been an interesting week. We had, as you may have noticed, an email about a time to process post-election. Mainly because there were a lot of things that were happening that weren't Christ-like on campus. And in fact, we continue to get stuff. But comments, people chanting after students who may be Latino, build the wall, or back to Africa, get back to Africa. Just some things that have been going on. I received an email, someone saying, just different emails, I got quite a few, but one that says, let's make America great again, and I responded, yeah, let's make America great again for everybody, for everyone, because again, God so loved the world, all of us. And so what does that look like for a Christian community? We do know from our campus climate study that students are experiencing things differently, depending on, again, their backgrounds, where they're at, social class, a variety of things. And so we have an ongoing commitment. It's got to be great for all of us, not just some of us, all of us. And how do we do that? I think it's a Christian imperative. I cannot call myself a Christian if I'm going to dwell in a space that is not supportive or inclusive of my brothers and sisters. And so what does that look like? Ongoing, value added. Sustainability. The numbers tell us statistically we will not be in business if we do not adapt to a diverse learning community. That means statistically, even here in California, the minority is the majority. So we are a diverse state, and our nation is diversifying, not only in terms of race and ethnicity, socioeconomic background, educational backgrounds, gender, etc. So as we pay attention to the needs of the growingly diverse community, we have to say, if I'm not motivated by research, if I'm not motivated by a Christian mandate, if I want to be in business, I better be able to speak to the needs of all my constituents or all potential students who might be coming to this community. Otherwise, I won't have a program or a university. Okay. Shirley Hoekstra, our CCCU president, actually says it's a matter of faith, excellence, but institutional survival. If we don't pay attention to the changing of the tides, we will not exist. All right, moving quickly, just some final things before Richard comes up. Some of the challenges, I thought it was important for us to acknowledge. What are the challenges as we look at diversifying our teams? Well, just real quick, look at this list. Assumptions, we talked about some of that. Implicit bias comes up on search committees. Pre-identified internal candidates, that's real too. internal politics that scare candidates away. We actually get them here on campus, but then they see some of this internal fighting and they're like, I'm not going there. Misperceptions about diverse hiring. Again, is it about a quota thing? Do you want so many X number of blacks, X number of Latinos, X number of this, that, etc. This idea of salaries, okay? If, for example, in my field, social work, sociology, maybe there's just a dearth of male applicants. You primarily in nursing and in social work, it is heavily dominated by women faculty. And so how do you intentionally pursue men who might be also interested in a faculty position? Well, they know that they're in demand because the numbers, it becomes a number game. And so if they realize, okay, I can apply here at APU, the salary is this, or I can actually apply at UCLA and my salary will be this. So competitive salaries really does play a part when we're trying to be intentional about diversifying our population. So that's a real thing. But we'll talk about some funding resources that could actually help with that through government grants, etc. Location factors. Now, I'm sorry, but as an African American woman, if I see somebody saying, hey, we have a great position in Montana, I'm sorry, Montana, California. I think California is an easy sale. If we want to use that to our advantage, of course, there are some, there's a downside of housing. That's very real. But weather-wise, I just got back from DC last night. Weather-wise, I'm like, thank God. Let's sell it. Use our location to our advantage. Lack of openings, of course, when it comes to faculty positions, extended contracts, term tenure. Those positions don't turn over as quickly as, say, sometimes a staff position can. So we realize there are some real factors that we have to work within those parameters. Lack of knowledge about the benefits of diverse teams, and then, quite honestly, flat out resistance to change. There was a great book years ago called Who Moved the Cheese? Who Moved My Cheese? And the idea of if we get stuck in this idea where we resist change, we get left out in the cold. So again, it behooves us to pay attention to the times and to adapt for the good of everyone. Okay, Richard's going to come at this time and take us further into more of the strategies behind how do you diversify your applicant pool or your teams.
So, where the proverbial rubber meets the road, you're probably asking yourself, so what do we do? How can we diversify our applicant pool and reflect the Lord's kingdom even more so at Azusa Pacific University? And so I'm going to give you a mental model right now that I've used in my walk as a leader, administrator. And I was very much influenced by the work of Thomas Sergiovanni. Thomas Sergiovanni wrote extensively on leadership in the 70s and 80s. And one of his frames has become very popular that we kind of toss around, and I don't think very many people know that it originated with Thomas Sergiovanni. The head, the hand, and the heart of leadership. So when we think about our mental model on diversifying our applicant pool, when we think about diversifying our environment, I offer the head, the hand, and the heart as frames for our walk, as well as frames for who do we want to be nurturing this environment with us here at APU. And so the head is what is the content knowledge that people are bringing to the interview, bringing to Azusa Pacific. The hand is what have they done? What are the experiences they're going to offer? And how are they going to communicate those experiences in the process of the interview as we are selecting the final applicant? And the heart. The heart would be, what's the passion they're bringing? Based on the head work, based on their experience at hand. But what passions do they have about diversity? How passionate are they about inclusion, equity, fairness, our love of the Lord? It all works together. So we're going to offer the next few slides, and I give you those frames because often we are asked, and Kim mentioned this earlier, sometimes when we talk about diversity-sensitive hiring, folks are saying, well, are you talking about quotas? Like somebody asked Kim, well, what are the numbers you're looking for? But it's beyond that. We want our applicants to have a full knowledge, experiential base, and heart for each other, for their students, for colleagues, etc. So we are a service to you. So as you're getting ready for your interview process, seek us out. We are that proverbial open door. So you can talk to the diversity officer. Kim has her door open. So does Susie. So do I. And as you see coming up in slide, or rather number 2, we have now, well, okay, I'll say it this way. After we finish the academic year 2016 and 2017, we will have over 100 diversity ambassadors across APU, and we are so excited. We have diversity ambassadors sitting in this room right now. And so we have people who are just aching to get started with projects, one of which is assisting with diversity hiring. And so use us as your resources. And number 3, address the bias that might still be floating around. And a suggestion, as you gather together your search committee, you may decide, avail yourself of our diversity ambassadors, and there's probably a diversity ambassador in your midst. If there isn't, we can find diversity ambassadors that can assist with search committees. And a suggestion, when you meet with your interview panel, go over parts of this handout or the PowerPoint and talk to the interview panel about what are we looking for? Do we have any internal biases just in our own little circle here? Now let's talk about what are we looking for, and what is our vision for Azusa Pacific? So you can use the resources we're providing today to assist you with addressing implicit bias within your search committee and have that conversation. And we are your resources. So you can look around this room right now and use colleagues from diverse backgrounds, and we can help each other. We may know people in the field, I know you do, that may be interested in Azusa Pacific. So cultivate your network. We've talked a little bit about this in our examples that Kim led us through. Include a clear hook, that diversity statement in the job announcement, and you surface key elements of that. So what you surface briefly is make it understandable, make it clear, make that hook authentic to who we are at APU. Post the job announcements in different venues, and we're going to provide you a resource electronically for you. Consider creative diverse hiring, hiring postdocs, visiting faculty, and then we also have resources on the handout for you that we'll send to you. Develop relationships with feeder schools, historically black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions. So cultivate the network intentionally, growing our own. So continue to be intentional about a proactive pipeline here at Azusa Pacific and provide competitive salaries that Kim mentioned earlier. So sample job announcement language, once again, in the electronic handout that we'll send out to you. And it doesn't have to be just this long paragraph. It can be very succinct, like committed to excellence through diversity. And then you elaborate on that, like the Vanguard posting. Demonstrate success in working with diverse populations, and then you elaborate on that. And all of these, within your circle of influence, I've always loved that phrase from Stephen Covey. Within your circle of influence and in your areas for hiring, customize your words to fit your particular area. Because that then, as Kim said when she was reading Vanguard's announcement, she said, I want to be part of that, or at least seriously consider being part of that network, being part of that university. And part of that hook is customizing your language in the areas that you are sending out the circle of influence that you're targeting. And then once again, interview questions. I'll just focus on number 3. So what do you see as the most challenging aspects of an increasingly diverse academic community? And what steps have you taken or plan to take to meet such challenges? The head, the hand, and the heart. So as a preview for the interview panel, as the lead, if you're the lead of the interview, I would say that you sit down with your committee and you say, what are we going to be looking for in these questions as well as the other questions that you're going to have for the interview? That pre-learning and pre-work in the committee can help when you calibrate all of your reflections after the interview process. As something we didn't put into our presentation, but you can also create your own rubric, if you will, within your committee to then be able to have the conversations after the interview as to if they addressed certain questions adequately and completely. So, back to the head, hand, and heart, and then we'll let you have some time to talk. So, what I would invite us to do when we are listening to the answers is how complete are the answers for something like number 3. So what do you see as the most challenging aspects of an increasingly diverse academic community? Well, I could go back into my research, back to the head, right? And talk about research I've done, research I've read on equity and inclusion. So, okay, now this particular person has a content knowledge of this question. And then, what steps have you taken or plan to take to meet such challenges? So now this particular question is servicing actions. See the hand? So what have they done professionally? How have they addressed challenges specifically? And what might they be thinking about? Because usually if someone is really a knowledgeable applicant, they will go deeper into a question like this. But then embedded in this, and this would be the question that often went on in a recent interview committee that I was on. We wrestled with this because after the applicant left, or you turn off the Skype, how passionate were they about diversity? They may have had the head knowledge, but they really were very superficial at what they've done in their career. And they really didn't seem like they, for lack of a better word, cared that much. Or it wasn't just on their radar professionally. That is a significant point of discussion for the interview committee. And I will say this as I kind of put a pause on this particular slide. I would say that's a significant conversation to have for any of the questions you ask an applicant. How knowledgeable are they? What actions have they taken in their own experience, their professional experiences? But then, are they passionate about being a musician or a biologist? Whatever the case may be. And then, and I was thinking of the sciences here too, because Peanut McCoy is a wonderful colleague. He models for me how integrating issues of diversity in the sciences is something that he does on a regular basis. So when I hear folks saying, well, you know what, you really can't talk about diversity if you're a scientist, blah, blah, blah. Talk to Peanut. because he will then say, yes, you can. So this actually, I think, is a good transition for our Q&A portion of this session with you, because now very poignant questions are being asked, and so and I'll just lead it off, is that when we are in interview committees and we are in the selection process, you may run into situations in which you have, and I'll just make it two men. You may have a Latino male, you may have a Caucasian male, and they may have gone through the whole process with flying colors. But then when you start looking at this area of diversity, that might be a pivotal point for the discussion. But I'm going to throw a little wrench into it. It may be that, I'll just put myself in that role. From the Latino male standpoint, I wasn't very passionate about diversity. I didn't have the experiences, and I didn't at least articulate that that was important in my career. Over here, the other applicant could have been very passionate about diversity, knew the research, had the experiences, and that would be the type of person we want at APU. It's not just that I'm a Latino male and have a shoe-in for a position. We are looking for the whole package. Head, hand, and heart. And at those opportunities, when we can diversify our colleagues in the positions, then I would still say that needs to be something that we do and articulate within our committees. But be prepared to have the conversation. In the diversity work that I've been a part of for longer than I guess I can count, it's the conversations we don't have that get us into trouble. It's the topics that we're fearful of unpacking that can make an ultimate decision the wrong one. So please, when you're in these very pivotal roles in interview committees, have the conversations and use our resources to help you unpack all the layers to consider. So Dr. Danu, I'm going to invite you back up to our group here. And so what questions are you thinking about right now that you would like to ask? And we'll continue as we close out our session.
And so think about your questions. I want to make a quick comment again to underscore what Richard just said. It's not just about race, because you can find people who are white who are very passionate about this work. It's not just about gender. There could be men who are more on track and supportive of women's initiatives than women themselves. I speak of, when I think of that point, I think of my mentor during my graduate program. His name is Joe Fagan. He's written hundreds of articles and has written multiple books on race relations. He's a white male who regularly gets death threats because of his support of women and people of color. And in fact, if I hadn't met him during my doctoral program, I would have thought he was an African-American male writing on these issues, just based on his work and his books. So it's not just a race thing. Again, he embraced me after the first week of my attendance at my doctoral program. One of the program coordinators looked at me squarely in the hall and said, "People like you don't normally make it here." And that was my welcome the first week. Well, Joe Fagan, who is a Harvard grad alum, took me under his wings and he said, "No, I'm going to be your mentor." I didn't even pick him. He said, "No, I'm picking you." And it was a great time, because this man who actually in his early years was a committed Christian, but had just this horrible experience with his take of how Christians treated others, and particularly those who are marginalized. He said he couldn't reconcile Bible and faith with what he saw with other Christians, and so I would regularly try to insert my little witness there. But he's like, I don't see it, Kim. I just can't see how people can justify this. But anyway, but our president has recently said we need to, as a leader, talking about the President's Council, we need to be preparing those who will take our jobs. And so there is a commitment at the top, starting with our board of trustees, who asked our president, who's ready to step into your position should you decide tomorrow you want to retire or whatever. And so the president, after his second bout of cancer, came back and was very much committed to, we need to have these conversations now. So there is ongoing conversation right now with people within our span of care. As I'm talking with my team, I know Vicki, Bob, you guys are talking to your team, as we're thinking and preparing those who will take over our jobs. So that is something that's taking place. I don't know if you want to add.